All right, let's start with the synopsis with respect to electrochemistry. Now, what exactly is electrochemistry? Branch of physical science that deals with the interconversions of electrical energy to chemical energy and chemical energy back to electrical energy. Depending upon the conversion of electrical to chemical or chemical to electrical, we say the cells are classified as electrochemical cells. Electrochemical cells are of two types: galvanic or voltaic cells, where there is conversion of chemical energy to electrical energy. Second is electrolytic cells, where there is conversion of electrical, what you can call electrical energy into chemical energy. For galvanic or voltaic cell, a spontaneous redox reaction takes place, is this clear, by producing electricity. So they are also called electrogenic cells. Electricity is generated. So chemical reactions takes place on its own, electricity is produced. Whereas for electrolytic cells, we say there is conversion of over there nothing but electrical to chemical, meaning a non-spontaneous redox reaction is made to take place where only on passing electricity, the chemical reaction will take place. That's an electrolytic cell. So first we will talk about that. So electrochemistry branch which deals with the relationships between electrical energy and chemical energy produced in a redox reactions. Now two types of cells. Now here there is a little bit over there a misprint is there. Electrochemical cell in which chemical energy produced can be converted into electrical energy. And this arrangement is also called galvanic or voltaic. Actually, they are not called electrochemical cell. Electrochemical cell are of two types. So you can just call them as electrochemical cells. Rather than electrochemical cells, we just call them as galvanic or voltaic cell. And I told you one more name can be given. It's also called electrogenic cell. Electrogenic, electricity is generated. And second, electrochemical cell in which chemical, yeah, this proper is proper, sorry. It's given proper only. Electrochemical cell, yeah. In which chemical energy is produced, that's basically yes. An electrochemical cell in which electric energy can be used to bring about a redox reaction. That's non-spontaneous, that's what we call as an electrolytic cell, correct? Yeah. That's basically the phenomenon of electrolysis. Second point comes, what is the use of all these cells? It's basically the production of metals, production of chemicals, then the electroplating processes, purification of metals, then the different types of batteries we have, the primary cells, the secondary cells and all. Now starting with the first part over there, electrochemical cells generally consists of, we all know every cell has got two compartments, a cathode and an anode, all right? Now cathode is where there is reduction, anode where there is oxidation. So they are connected externally by means of a conducting wire, and internally they are connected by means of a salt bridge. So here when we are talking about electrochemical cell, this is basically nothing but galvanic cell is what we are talking. Okay, so look over here where what is happening in this category. You have the zinc electrode negative and copper cathode, that's the positive electrode. Electrons are moving from the anode to the cathode, and internally through the salt bridge, the ions will move. Here it says if the external EMF is less than 1.1 volt, then electrons will flow from zinc to copper. Current will flow from copper, that's the conventional currents, from copper to zinc. Zinc dissolves at the anode, matlab zinc undergoes dissolution, and copper deposits at the cathode. So this undergoes deposition. That is as per the Nuss theory of de-electronation and electronation. Okay, that's one. That is if the EMF is less than 1.1 volt. Second is if the EMF is exactly 1.1 volt, then what it says, no flow of electrons will happen. There'll be no chemical reaction. All right, which means now what's an external EMF? An infinitesimally small EMF applied in the reverse direction. Like for example, this reaction, this cell, what you see is the Daniell cell. So for Daniell cell, the reactions are zinc plus copper sulfate gives you ZnSO4 plus copper. So zinc gets oxidized and cupric ions are reduced to copper. Now here in the forward direction, the EMF of the cell we know is 1.1 volt. So if you apply an EMF slightly greater than 1.1 volt, in the reverse direction, then the cell reaction may be reversed. So external EMF is the EMF applied in the opposite direction to have the reverse reaction. So if the external the external EMF is less, then it's only the forward. If it is equal to, if the external EMF and the EMF of the cell are same, then we will say no chemical reaction will happen. And if the external EMF is greater than 1.1 volt, then yes, the backward reaction will happen, subject to it is a secondary cell. What is a secondary cell? Secondary cells are ones that chargeable batteries. So for chargeable batteries part, we can talk where electron flows from copper to zinc. But exactly the reverse reaction will happen of this. Forward zinc got oxidized to zinc ions, backward copper will get oxidized to cupric ions. Forward cupric ions got reduced to copper, backward reaction zinc ions will be reduced to zinc, that way. All right, that is one part where zinc is deposited and copper will dissolve. That is one category what we have. Then electrochemical cells, that's in figure A, is called the electrolytic cell. B is the galvanic cell. The most common galvanic cell is the Daniell cell. That is this reaction where zinc is oxidized and the cupric ions are reduced. So chemical energy is produced over here. So it converts the chemical energy produced into electrical energy. So chemical energy to electrical energy, that's a spontaneous redox reaction is made to take place. Voltage of the Daniell cell is 1.1 volt, where the concentration of zinc and cupric ions are standard concentration 1 molar. Okay. Now, if an external opposite potential is applied, then the reaction can continue to take place till the opposing voltage reaches 1 volt. This is exactly what I was talking about, the spontaneity and the non-spontaneity part. Okay. Now, at this stage, the reaction stops, no current flows. Further increase in the external potential starts the reaction, but in the opposite direction. Now it functions as a electrolytic cell. All right. So when you apply an external EMF and the backward reaction takes place, that point, that is when this backward reaction takes place, that point we will say it will behave like a electrolytic cell. Okay. The backward reaction will happen. So you are forcing the backward reaction to take place where it will consume electricity. Okay. That is one. Then the second part we have over there is about nothing but galvanic cell, that is to convert chemical energy to electrical energy over there. Chemical energy into electrical energy. Now, Daniell cell setup, zinc is oxidized to zinc ions, cupric ions are reduced to copper. So the electrons are cancelled out. So oxidation and reduction. So at anode, anode comes from the word anther. Anther means to go out. So that's basically loss of electrons. That's oxidation or increase in its oxidation number. Cathode comes from the word cather, means to come in. That is gain of electrons, or we say reduction, process where there is gain of electrons or there is a decrease in its oxidation number. Same way a redox reaction, like for copper and silver, where copper 0 to +2, silver ions +1 to 0. Okay. So you balance the silver ions over there, so the electrons are cancelled. Internally, we have a salt bridge. Salt bridge made up of electrolyte, either potassium chloride, potassium nitrate, potassium sulfate, or ammonium nitrate. And all these are dissolved in a non-electrolyte, that is agar-agar gel. Agar-agar gel is basically nothing but a seaweed colloid, what we also call as brown chlorophyll. All right. It's a very cheaply available raw material in which, these ions are there. And this U-shaped glass tube is basically one limb goes into the anode, one goes into the cathode. All right. And the function of the salt bridge is to maintain the electroneutrality. That's what it says. To complete the inner circuit, that is the internal circuit, by the flow of ions, and to maintain electrical neutrality in the solution. Now, when I say electrical neutrality, at anode there is oxidation. So there'll be excess cations at the anode. At the cathode there is reduction, so that there'll be excess anions there because the cations are going to get reduced. So these excess ions which are accumulated, is this clear? They basically will give rise to liquid-liquid junction potential. That is excess ions which are accumulated. So to neutralize them from the salt bridge, you have the opposite ions going and neutralizing these excess ions at anode. That is basically the cations at anode and the anions at cathode over there. Okay. That is one. Certain features there. Oxidation is basically anode. Yeah, that's the negative electrode. And cathode is the positive electrode. Why anode is the negative electrode? Because electrons are generated at the anode and they go out from the anode. That's why anode is negatively charged. Why cathode is positively charged in a galvanic cell? Because the cations rush to the electrode to gain those electrons. So the cations rush to the electrode, so the electrode is positively charged. So that's basically the diagram part over there with respect to Daniell cell. Then same examples. Now representation. How is the cell represented with respect to galvanic cell? Cell representation, the anodic half is written on the extreme left hand side, where a single vertical line means a direct contact between the metal and the metal ions. Cathode is written on the extreme right hand side, where between the metal and the metal ions there's a single line which indicates direct contact. At the two extreme ends, you will have the metals where you will have the electrical contacts. All right. Now in between the two half cells, you have a double vertical line that indicates the salt bridge. So externally, from the two metal rods from anode to cathode, there'll be flow of electrons. Internally, with the help of the salt bridge, the ions will move. That's how you complete the circuit over there. That is one. Now in this case, if you have, as we see ahead, we will see the different types of electrodes. So if you are having something called as gas electrodes, then for gases to maintain their electrical contacts, we take the help of platinum metal. All right, that is what is being used. So these are the different cells where the concentrations are to be given, that is C1 and C2 for zinc ions and cupric ions. The standard concentrations are 1 molar. For gas electrodes, the pressure of the gas to be specified, which is going to be 1 atmospheric pressure. All right. So whenever you see a cell representation, on the left hand side is your anodic half. So like for example, look at that. Copper with cupric ions and silver ions with silver. So 0 to +2. So that's the anodic half. On the right hand side, +1 to 0. So that's the cathodic half. That's reduction where silver ions are reduced to silver. So that's the cathode part. Okay, that's one. Then in a salt bridge, the electrolyte used is either potassium chloride or potassium nitrate or ammonium nitrate. Because it is basically transport number, the speed, the fraction of the current carried by an ion, the speed by which they move to the opposite electrode. That's called the transport number, also called as the Hittorf's number. This is because the cations and anions move almost at the same speed and have almost the same transport number. What is this transport? As I said, at anode there are excess cations and at cathode there are excess anions. So they need to be neutralized. So to neutralize them, the opposite ions have to move to the speed. So whatever is the current passed, the fraction of the current carried by an ion, that's called the transport number. Now it says generally potassium chloride, NaCl or ammonium chloride cannot be used in salt bridge containing silver as one of the electrodes because it precipitates as AgCl, which we all know is a sparingly soluble salt that precipitates in the cation analysis of group 1 of the cation analysis chart over there. So if AgCl precipitate, it interferes over there. That's why you cannot use these as electrolytes. Now EMF, that is the is also related to the enthalpy change. That's nothing but delta H. What we also have done in thermodynamics as heat of reaction, where what it says, and the temperature coefficient. Well, look at that. Small change in E, that is the EMF, upon the small change in temperature at constant pressure. So we can have it as EMF E is equal to minus delta H upon NF plus T into change in its EMF upon change in temperature at constant pressure. So this is basically E2 minus E1 upon T2 minus T1. Okay. Standard cell whose EMF does not change with temperature, and that's called a Weston standard cell. So normally standard cells means standard concentrations of 1 molar. If there are other concentrations, then yes, definitely they will be changing over there. And if a salt bridge is removed, then we all know the voltage straight away drops to 0 over there. That is one part. Then comes electrode potentials, EMF and electrochemical series. Now electrode potential, the potential developed at either the cathode or an anode. Due to at cathode there will be reduction half, at anode there will be oxidation half. So the potential developed is what we call as electrode potential. If there is more tendency for oxidation, that's called the oxidation potential. And at cathode, where there is reduction, that's called the reduction potential. And if it is the standard concentrations of 1 molar at 298 Kelvin, then that's called the standard oxidation potentials, what we call as SOP, or the standard reduction potentials. And this electrode potential, if anybody remembers, it's a summation of three things. One, that's enthalpy of sublimation, where the electrode and the electrolytic solution comes in direct contact. So the tips of the metal electrode, first it gets vaporized, so solid to gas. So that's called enthalpy of sublimation. Then in the gaseous state, it's easy to lose electrons. So that's called enthalpy of ionization. That's called ionization enthalpy. And third, hydration enthalpy. Hydration enthalpy, those ions in the gaseous state combine with water over there, or they are surrounded by the water molecules. So that's called the hydration enthalpy. So we say your electrode potential E is a summation of three types of enthalpy change. Delta H sublimation, delta H ionization, plus delta H hydration. Okay. And lower the value of all the three means the summation when I do and I get lower the value, but the more tendency of that electrode to either get oxidized or get reduced. So whoever value is lower will have more tendency either for oxidation or for reduction. All right, that is one. Lose or gain electrons, that's oxidation potential. When it gains electrons, that's reduction potential. Standard conditions 298 Kelvin and 1 molar concentration, standard concentration. That's 1 mole in 1 liter of solution. And if it is a gas, the standard pressure 1 atmosphere or 1 bar, where we know 1 bar is 10 raised to 5 pascals. Then absolute value of any half cell cannot be found directly. It has to be coupled with an electrode of known potentials. So we have two types of reference electrodes. Primary reference electrode, that is She, standard hydrogen electrode, and a secondary reference electrode, what we call as calomel electrode. So it depends. So when you couple them either with She, or you couple any unknown half cell with She, or you couple it with calomel, then we'll be able to calculate the potential of the another half cell. And that's by calculating its EMF. With EMF, we have three formulas. With respect to reduction, cathodic reduction minus anodic reduction. With respect to oxidation, anodic oxidation minus cathodic oxidation. Or third, anodic oxidation plus cathodic reduction. All three will give you the same answers only. Okay. And whenever the EMF is positive, that's basically nothing but a cell reactions are spontaneous. Normal hydrogen electrode, what we also call it as She. So in some books they write as NHE or She. It's one and the same thing. So that's a diagrammatic part. Bell-shaped glass jacket immersed into a solution of 1 molar HCl over there. Then a platinum wire over there. And through one of the outlets, hydrogen gas is bubbled. So the hydrogen gas bubbled will go down. There's a plate called the platinized platinum plate, which is coated with platinum black to increase its surface area to have faster adsorption. So within 4 to 5 minutes, as hydrogen gas is bubbled, there is an equilibrium formed between the hydrogen gas and the H plus ions. One second. So that equilibrium formed between the hydrogen gas and the H plus ions, that basically over there is nothing but the tendency for it to get oxidized, where hydrogen passes into the solution as H plus ions. Now this half cell can behave either as anode or as cathode, because the potential developed is so small that it is arbitrarily taken as 0. That's what it says. Standard potential is taken as 0. So the value is there. There is a slight oxidation value. All right. So the oxidation value is so close to 0 that it is arbitrarily taken as 0. All right. So platinum, hydrogen gas, H plus ions. That's why if you see in the SRP series, all the values of the electrodes are found by coupling with She. So when you couple them with She has an arbitrarily fixed potential of 0 volts. So whatever is the EMF, you can easily calculate the electrode potential values of all the other electrodes. All right, that's one. Cell potential, that's the difference between the two half cell. I told you the three formulas. Normally, With respect to your boards, it is the SRP series, so the standard reduction potential series. So it's cathodic reduction minus anodic reduction. That's the part. Then EMF, that's the potential difference when no current is flowing. That's the potentiometer method there. And potential difference is the difference between the electrode potentials over there under any conditions. Second comes a secondary reference electrode, what we call as calomel electrode. Calomel electrode, calomel is the trade name of mercurous chloride, that is Hg2Cl2. Okay. Now calomel secondary reference means its potential remains accurate or its potential remains constant with respect to different concentrations of KCl. We have three concentrations of KCl, zero point 0.1 molar, 1 molar and a saturated solution. So that is the part over there. Now with normal hydrogen electrode or She, what we call, there are certain difficulties. One, very difficult to get pure and dry hydrogen gas at 1 molar and difficult to handle it. Now, as hydrogen gas gets bubbled inside and produces H plus ions, the concentration of the solution changes. So H plus ion concentration does not remain 1 molar, as well as the pressure of hydrogen gas to be difficult in maintaining at 1 molar, at 1 atmosphere, sorry. And it says the electrode is poisoned even by traces of impurities. And plus it's an entire glass instrument, so it's quite fragile, so difficult to handle there. So hence it is commonly, we have the common electrode we use is calomel electrode, called as the secondary reference electrode. So remember, we have two references. Primary reference is She, secondary reference is calomel, where again we have over there nothing but a glass tubing there, in which we have three things. What type of an electrode is calomel? Calomel is basically nothing but a metal sparingly soluble salt electrode. So remember that calomel electrode is a metal sparingly soluble salt electrode. How? Metal in direct contact with its sparingly soluble salt, also in direct contact with a solution of a common anion, that is KCl, which contains chloride. So the mercury combines with the KCl to give you Hg2Cl2. So all three together. At the bottom, the platinum wire is there, and plus a salt bridge is either separately there or otherwise the glass tubing is such. Okay, for calomel, you don't require a salt bridge. That is one part. Reduction potential depends upon, now these three values very important. 0.1 normal or 0.1 molar, 1 molar or 1 normal, or a saturated solution. Therefore 0.1 normal 0.3338 volts, 1 normal 0.28 and saturated is 0.2415. 0.1 normality or molarity is same because the mercurous ions, that's basically monovalent. Then the next we have the electrode representation is, look at that. Now for mercury, to have a contact, we will be using platinum. So platinum wire dipped in mercury, which is in direct contact with mercurous chloride, again in direct contact with a solution of a common anion, that is chloride, where the mercury combines with the chloride to give you Hg2Cl2. So that's the forward reaction. I just write it down to get an idea of how this reaction comes. Once again, calomel can behave either as the anode or the cathode, depending upon the other half cell with whom it is coupled. Same thing for She, standard hydrogen electrode. When She is coupled with any of the electrodes placed above hydrogen in the SRP series, then She becomes the anode because the one placed above hydrogen have more tendency to undergo reduction. So they will become the cathode, She will be the anode. And for all the elements placed below hydrogen, She will become the cathode and all the elements below will become the anode because their SRP values are negative. So they have more tendency to undergo oxidation and She will again undergo reduction. Same way calomel you can use either way depending on the potential of the other half cell with whom they are coupled. Just see these reactions. Mercury gets oxidized to mercurous ions by the loss of one electron. We know that mercurous ions exist as a dimer. So Hg plus Hg plus gives us Hg2 2 plus. Okay, so this becomes 2Hg, becomes Hg2 2 plus by the loss of 2 electrons. Okay, that's dimerization, mercurous ions combined. And these Hg2 2 plus combined with the 2 chloride coming from KCl to give you the salt Hg2Cl2. Now in the net reaction, if you observe carefully, what will happen? The mercurous ions will get cancelled. That's why the balancing. Have a look at 2 mercury plus 2 chloride gives you mercurous chloride plus 2 electrons. Then measurement of cell EMF, cathodic reduction minus anodic reduction. That is E naught right hand side electrode minus left hand side. This is with respect to SRP values, standard reduction potential values. I told you अगर यही oxidation पूछा, then see some places people say convert the oxidation to reduction. I suggest not required. Just remember the EMF is higher minus the lower. So with respect to reduction, whose reduction is greater? Cathode. So it's cathode minus anode. So cathodic reduction minus anodic reduction. If it is oxidation wise, whose oxidation is greater? Anode. So it will be anodic oxidation minus cathodic oxidation. And third, summation of both anodic oxidation plus cathodic reduction will give us the EMF. All right, that is one. So you can calculate the EMF. Similarly, so both calomel and She can be used to calculate the EMF of the cell as well as to calculate the electrode potential of unknown half cells. Now different types of electrodes. These are all, they can behave as anode or cathode. Metal, metal ion. Metal dipped into a solution of its own ions. Is this clear? Then that's called a metal, metal ion. Like zinc rod in zinc ions or copper rod in cupric ions. Now here the reaction given over there is zinc ions gains 2 electrons. It's not necessary always it will be like this. It's basically a reversible sign. Why? Because when it's a half cell, we don't know it will behave as an anode or a cathode. Only when it couples with another half cell, then yes, if it is anode, then it's going to be the backward reaction. If it is a cathode, then it is a forward reaction. Okay, same way, these are all reversible reactions. Okay. Then second comes amalgam electrode. Amalgam, any metal blended with mercury, that's an amalgam. So over there, that's a zinc amalgam over there along with zinc ions. And again, these are all reversible electrodes. So anode or cathode, depending on the other electrodes. Gas electrodes, here we use either silver, gold or platinum. Majoritarily, you will see platinum being used for electrical contact because for gases, the contact is with platinum. So platinum in direct contact with hydrogen gas and again direct contact with its own ions, that is the H plus ions. And for hydrogen gas, the pressure to be specified, that's a standard pressure of 1 atmosphere, and for H plus ions, the standard concentration 1 molar. Same way, chlorine gas electrode, here all platinum is with direct contact. Same way, it's a reversible reaction. And third is the oxygen gas electrode, where oxygen over there nothing but it will gain electrons and will get reduced to OH ions. But both the sides, so forward is reduction, backward is oxidation. So all these are gas electrodes, hydrogen with H plus ions, chlorine with chloride ions, oxygen with OH ions. Then comes what we have as metal insoluble or metal sparingly soluble salt electrode. That's what I said. So metal in direct contact with a sparingly soluble salt, single vertical line is direct contact. And again in direct contact with a solution of a common anion where the metal combines with the anion to form its salt. Okay, so that's the reaction. Once again, both the sides it can be cathode or anode depending upon with whom it is coupled. And second is this only right now what we did, where for mercury, we take the help of platinum, mercury, direct contact Hg2Cl2, direct contact KCl. That's calomel, the trade name, where again, it's both-sided reaction. Clear? I'll just write the net reaction means how do you get that reaction of AgCl plus electron giving you silver plus chloride. Have a look at it. AgCl gives you Ag plus chloride ions. Silver ions undergo reduction to form silver. So if you cancel these silver ions, that's what your net reaction is. AgCl plus it gains an electron to give you silver plus chloride. Next we have oxidation reduction electrode, what we also call as redox electrodes. Okay. Now what exactly is a redox electrode? Redox is basically an inert metal like platinum, is dipped into the solution of the same element, showing variable oxidation states. So wherever we have like copper with cuprous cupric, iron with ferrous ferric, tin with stannous tannic. So wherever we have, two different oxidation states, we can talk about the redox electrode. So once again, what's a redox electrode? Redox electrode is basically, we will say, inert metal like platinum dipped into a solution of the same element, showing variable oxidation states. So look at that. Platinum in direct contact over there with ferrous and ferric. Okay, where it can be any one reaction. If it is cathode, ferric will get reduced to ferrous. If it is the anode, ferrous will get oxidized to ferric. All right. So that's one. So all are these are reversible electrodes. So they can behave as anode or cathode. Then the next one. All right. Electrodes in the measurement of P of H. Now here hydrogen electrode. All right. It is the one we will say whose P of H is to be determined. It is combined with calomel to make a cell EMF can be measured. So using saturated KCl, now we just now spoke about the concentration, zero point 0.1 molar or 0.1 normal was 0.3338 volts. Then a 1 normal or 1 molar is 0.28 and a saturated is 0.242. That's the part. So P of H is equal to E, that is the EMF, minus 0.242, that exact is 0.2415 upon 0.0591. So we can have that part as one of the formulas. So you may just, so if you have the calomel ka value, saturated KCl, or maybe 0.1 molar or 1 molar is used, depending upon whatever concentration. If you remember the values, so keep in mind the values once again. 0.1 molar, 0.337 volts, 1 molar, 0.28 volts, and saturated 0.242 volts. That is one. So this formula can be used. EMF minus whatever is the value. Saturated is 0.2415 upon 0.0591. Second, we have quinhydrone electrode. Quinhydrone electrode is nothing but it's an extra one just for knowledge based. It's an equipolar mixture of quinone and hydroquinone. Now, what exactly is quinone? Quinone is basically, we have two ketonic groups which are present. That's called basically a quinone over there. So I'll just show you what is a quinone. Observe here. This compound is what I call as para benzoquinone. All right, it can be at ortho also. This is one example. And second we have is hydroquinone. Hydroquinone, now see that formula is correct, C6H4O2. Okay. And next one, hydroquinone, if I talk, then that is this compound. Two OH groups at para position, then that's what we call as hydroquinone. Here also the formula C6H6 and you have O2. That, okay. A pinch of this is added to a solution whose pH is to be determined, representing quinone by Q and hydroquinone by QH2. Reversible reactions are made up over there. Combining again with calomel, EMF of the cell is measured, whose P of H can be calculated. That is one. Then there is also glass electrode. Glass electrode over there, what it says, glass tube having a glass bulb. It is filled with a solution of constant P of H. That is basically a buffer solution, usually 1 normal HCl saturated with hydroquinone. We all know buffer solutions, right? The one which will resist a change on its P of H, even if you add small quantities of strong acid or strong base. The wall of the glass bulb acts as a membrane between the solution inside and experimental solution inside, in which the bulb is immersed. It's combined with calomel to form a cell over there. So all these three electrodes, the glass electrode, the quinhydrone electrode, as well as hydrogen electrode, all three are coupled with calomel, because calomel ka potential will remain constant with respect to concentration of KCl. And then the P of H can be found over there. Okay. Majority for your exams, this is the first one formula is what is important. That is the P of H will be the EMF of the cell minus, depending upon KCl concentration, saturated hoga to 0.242 or 0.2415 upon 0.0591 gives us the P of H. Then reversible and irreversible cell. Now what is exactly reversible? When an external EMF infinitesimally greater is applied in the reverse direction, and the cell reactions, if they get reversed, then that's what I call as a reversible cell. An irreversible cell, if I apply also external EMF, the cell reactions are not reversed, then that's what we call as an irreversible cell. So reversible cell is basically our car batteries, that's the lead accumulator, and irreversible cells is basically the dry cell, what we also call as the Leclan cell, the normal pencil cell, what we use in our house for the remotes and all right. So that is one parameter. Now what it says, yeah, can be reversed by applying opposite voltage greater than the cell EMF, that is infinitesimally greater. So that is one hand. What it says, for example, Daniel cell, where zinc with H2SO4 and copper sulfate. So forward zinc is oxidized, cupric ions are reduced. In the backward, the copper will get oxidized. On the other hand, a cell is irreversible, cannot be reversed. Like look at this. If you just have zinc, H2SO4, copper, then you can't have, here what will happen? Only zinc over there will get oxidized in this case. You can't have a backward reaction taking place in this part. Or a dry cell, as I said, a pencil cell. Now what it says, EMF is found by the oxidation and potential values over there. Suppose we have to calculate electrode potential. Now this is basically, suppose you want to calculate the electrode potential value, then we can also calculate. Now we all know EMF of a cell is an intensive property. Intensive, independent of the amount of the substance taken. Like for example, we know the EMF of a Daniel cell is 1.1 volt. Now if the EMF is 1.1 volt, if I take, for example, 100 gram zinc rod and 100 gram copper rod, rather than just zinc wires and copper wires, what will happen? Will the EMF increase? No. Intensive property means it's independent. What's going to happen? Only the life of the cell will increase. So the Daniel cell will go on for a little longer time if I'm using a larger rod. So remember that EMF of cells are intensive properties. So suppose you are given, for example, here you can use basically delta G, where we have done in thermodynamics, delta G naught is minus NF E naught of the cell. All right, but delta G naught is the standard free energy chain, is equal to N, that's the number of electrons exchanged, into F, that's Faraday 96,500, into the E naught of the cell, that is the standard EMF of the cell, which we calculate by cathodic reduction minus anodic reduction. So if we are given the values, like for example, we have to calculate cuprous to copper, and you are given values of cupric to copper and cupric to cuprous, then with the help of delta G, we can calculate the remaining ones. That is delta G1, delta G2, delta G3. So we'll have delta G3 is equal to delta G1 plus G2. Finally, you will add. So you will see how the reactions are. Now, for example, see here, you need these two examples they have given, cupric to copper and cupric to cuprous is given. And you want the value of cuprous gaining an electron to form copper. So what you have to do is, the second reaction, what is given here, reverse the reaction. Now when you reverse the reaction, the E naught value will also get reversed. Why? Because oxidation potential is equal to reduction potential, only it has an opposite sign. Okay, so you reverse to and add. So if I reverse to and add, the cupric ions on the opposite side will get cancelled. One electron also will get cancelled over there. All right, so in that case you will have your answer, and then correspondingly delta G naught you do. So see that part, delta G naught is G1 minus G2. That's the same thing. You reverse it and add, or you just subtract that part. So for this, N is the number of electron, F is Faraday. Now that F definitely is going to remain constant over there, we can calculate the value of cuprous to copper. Okay, that is one. Same way, disproportionation reactions can also be done. We all know disproportionation, simultaneous oxidation and reduction of the same species. So cuprous is getting reduced to copper and cuprous is getting oxidized to cupric. So if I have to do two cuprous ions, one getting reduced to copper, one getting oxidized to cupric ions, we just add the two, we will get the value. And majority times copper ka value for cupric to copper is plus 0.337 volts. Keep in mind. Okay. And for zinc, the SRP value is minus 0.763 volts. Then comes the electrochemical series where all the elements are arranged in the form of electrodes in the decreasing order of their SRP values. All right. So arrange in the order of Yes, now see this part. Now they have said the word of increasing electrode potential. It should be decreasing electrode potential. That's the reduction potential values. All right, that is one. Then applications, we can predict the oxidizing and the reducing agent. In the SRP series, the one at the top, that is the halogens. They are the strongest oxidizing agents. They readily undergo reduction. You can predict over there what we call as nothing but metal displacement reaction. Okay, which metal will displace whom from their salt solution. And what is the rule? The element placed below will displace the one placed above from its salt solution. That is the part what we have. Okay, that's what we also call it as a diagonal rule. All right, nothing to do with diagonal relationship. Diagonal rule in the sense, for example, suppose I'm talking, have a look at it. I have silver ions gaining an electron to form silver. The E naught of silver is plus 0.8 volts. And down I have zinc. Zinc ions gain 2 electron to form zinc. E naught is minus 0.763 volts. How do you talk about the diagonal rule? This in the reduction half, the element placed below, the species placed on the right hand side, that is zinc, backward reaction will happen. Zinc will get oxidized to zinc ions, and above, the one with higher SRP, the species on the left, the ions will get reduced. That's the diagonal rule, what I'm talking about. Zinc will displace silver from its salt solution. In other words, zinc will get oxidized, silver ions will get reduced. Okay. Then the next part, so that's the metal displacements. What we have, the formulas, either it's anodic oxidation plus cathodic reduction, or with respect to reduction, cathodic reduction minus anodic reduction. Okay. And same thing is with respect to oxidation, then it is anodic oxidation minus cathodic oxidation. So be very clear to read. If they don't say, they just say E naught values, then E naught is the standard value. Standard is with respect to reduction. So it's cathodic reduction minus anodic reduction. To compare the activities of the metal, the element placed at the bottom, that's the strongest reducing agent. That's basically lithium at the bottom, the strongest reducing agent, and fluorine on the top, the strongest oxidizing agent. That's the part. There are only 5 metals which are placed above hydrogen. One is 3 elements of what we call as group 11 of the periodic table, called the coinage metals: copper, silver, gold, platinum, and mercury. These metals, they have less tendency to get oxidized, but their ions have more tendency to get reduced. That's why they are placed above hydrogen. Then you can predict the spontaneity. Spontaneity is if the EMF is positive, cell reactions are spontaneous. We can calculate delta G. If a reaction is spontaneous and it generates electricity, then delta G is going to be lowered. The free energy will be lowered, which indicates spontaneity. Then Faraday, thermal stability of oxides, where it says greater the oxidation potential, lesser is the reduction potential, more easily it can lose electrons, so greater is the electropositive character, and hence it readily forms its stable oxide. So the element placed at the bottom, which is a strong reducing agent, will readily form its oxides. Yeah. And whereas these metal oxides, that is of silver and mercury, which are placed above, their E naught values are positive, and their oxides decompose to give metal and oxygen. Yeah. Here, whenever we are multiplying to cancel the electrons, is this clear? Keep in mind, do not multiply the E naught values, because E naught values are intensive properties. Okay. So greater the reduction potential, stronger is the oxidizing agent. Metal with higher oxidation potential or lower reduction potential, keep this in mind now. SOP is equal to minus SRP and vice versa. Okay. We can calculate the E naught of the cells. Then Nernst equation for single electrode potential and for EMF of a cell. So Nernst electrode potential is basically, the single electrode potential is the standard electrode potential minus 2.303 RT by NF, where 2.303 RT by F, that's a constant value, that is 0.0591 upon N, log of. Why 1 upon Mn plus? Because the metal, that's the product, upon the reactant. Now metals, pure solids or pure liquids, their concentration is taken as unity. That's 1. That's why it's 1 upon the metal ions, how we have. So if you want just log of metal ions, you flip it, and that minus sign over here will become positive. Okay, or you can leave it as it is. The Nernst equation for the EMF of a cell. So for half cell as well as for EMF, we can calculate that will be E of the cell, that is the EMF of the cell is equal to standard EMF. Standard EMF SRP होगा तो cathodic reduction minus anodic reduction 2.303 RT by NF log of active mass products of the active masses of the products upon products of the active masses of reactants. That is basically these small x, y, small a and b. They are the stoichiometric coefficients which is raised to an appropriate power. What we have in the LOMA, law of mass action part. So that's the active masses of the products upon the active masses of reactants. Clear? Okay. Nernst equation, yeah, we can calculate where it says sometimes rather than what we can call concentration is 1 molar, they sometimes write A is equal to 1. That's called the activity. So what is activity? That's the activity coefficient into molality. Now generally it's aqueous solution. So for aqueous solution, 1000 grams of pure solvent can be written as 1000 ml of water. And activity coefficient, they write A is equal to 1. So that's the part. Activity is activity coefficient into molality. Okay, so they are basically used in place of molar solutions. So when molar concentrations are not there, they write activity. That is one part. And gases are involved, then you are supposed to account for the pressure of the gas. Where look at this reaction, where if you have to write the Nernst equation, so it's the products, metal ions into hydrogen. So it will be the pressure of hydrogen gas upon H plus ions raised to 2 there. Okay. Same way for hydrogen electrode, the representation, where we can write this as E naught, where E naught is standard is 0. So 0.059. So if I just flip this and what is log of 1 upon H plus ions? P of H, because P of H by definition क्या है? Minus log of H plus ions to the base 10, or we can write this as 1 upon log of H plus ions to the base 10. Either way, you can write it either way. So if it goes up, there'll be a negative sign coming. So that's the way we can also say it will be 0.0591 P of H. That is one. Then comes the equilibrium constant, what we have, where we say at equilibrium. Is this clear? What is happening exactly? E of the cell is going to be 0 there. Hence, E naught of the cell will not be 0 because it's a standard value. Log of Kc, that's the equilibrium constant. That is the ratio of the active masses of products upon ratio of active masses of reactants. So we can have straight away E naught of the cell is 2.303 RT by NF log of K, where again 2.303 RT by F is constant. So we have the formula E naught of the cell is 0.0591 upon N log of Kc to the base 10, where N, the net number of electrons exchanged. So whatever is lost at the anode, same electrons are gained by the cathode. And then it says if log Kc is X, then Kc can also be written as 10 raised to X. Normally temperatures is always 298 Kelvin. So that's the part over there. Ln Kc. So Ln is natural log to the base E. We converted log to the base 10, multiplying factor is 2.303. Then next we have electrochemicals, cells and Gibbs energy. That is delta G naught, standard EMF cell, and delta G naught and equilibrium constant. So putting that, the formulas: 1, delta G naught is minus 2.303 RT log of K to the base 10, where electrical work done is minus NF E of the cell, where NF is basically nothing but the charge and E of the cell. That's similar to what we have work done is equal to the concept of work done can be explained there. Then other formulas where we can also talk about entropy change. Entropy change, the randomness of the system. Delta G is minus NFE of the cell. Delta S is entropy change, which is NF. That is nothing but the change in the EMF with respect to change in temperature at constant pressure, which is E2 minus E1 upon T2 minus T1. We know the Gibbs-Helmholtz equation, delta G is delta H minus T delta S. We can predict the spontaneity. Delta G, the free energy change. Delta H, the enthalpy change, exothermic or endothermic. And delta S, that's the entropy change over there, where if the reaction is over there, you have more gaseous products, then delta S is going to be products. And if the gaseous products are less than the gaseous reactant, delta S will be negative. Concentration cells, what we have, the most important concentration cell is the one in which both the electrodes are of the same type, but the concentrations are different. Look at that, zinc with zinc ions on one side, and again zinc with zinc ions, but the concentrations are different. Then for such, the EMF is calculated by E is 0.0591 upon N log of C2 by C1. So these are called concentration cells, where in both the electrodes are same metal ion, or both hydrogen gas electrodes. That way. Well, look at that. This is the first one, is the hydrogen gas electrode, where we'll have platinum on both the sides for electrical contact. Similarly, hydrogen, where it is P1 upon P2. So anodic half hydrogen P1, cathodic half hydrogen P2, where we say log of P1 has to be more than P2 because that log value has to be positive. Another example is zinc amalgam. What we have the electrode. So zinc amalgam with zinc ions, or zinc amalgam with the zinc ions. Whether, look at that, A1 and A2 are basically nothing but the activities. That is in place of molarity. What we said. That's the activity coefficient into its molality. Then next we have, yes, that's the liquid-liquid junction potential. This is the potential developed because of the excess ions. When two electrolytic solutions are directly in contact with different speed, as a result, the potential difference is set up. It is called liquid junction potential. EMF is thus the sum of the oxidation potential of one, reduction of the second, and the liquid junction potential. So all the three together gives the EMF. Type of junction generally applied in the galvanic cell is the salt bridge, which contains KCl, where K plus and Cl ions move at equal speed. So that's why the junction potential is taken as 0. Equal speed, that's the transport number. So liquid junction potential, the potential developed at the junction of the two electrodes, which are in direct contact with this electrolytic solution due to excess ions accumulated. So from the salt bridge, if equal ions will go on both the sides and they have equal speeds, so they will neutralize them at simultaneously at the same time. That's why the liquid junction potential is taken as 0. So hence the EMF of a cell is nothing but the summation of the two potentials. That's anodic oxidation plus cathodic reduction. Okay, that's one. Then comes the concept of conductance, that is conductors and non-conductors over there. The one which allows the electricity to flow, that's conductors. Which do not, they are the non-conductors or insulators. Types of conductors, that's metals, graphite, then electrolytic conductors, aqueous solutions, electrolytes and non-electrolytes, which in aqueous solution, that in presence of water or in the molten state without water. Well, there are only free ions present. Then those are the electrolytes. And the ones which doesn't give any ions, like sugar, glucose, urea, those are the non-electrolytes. Strong and weak electrolytes. Strong electrolytes, the one which ionizes or dissociates almost completely, and the one which ionizes to a very less extent. So basically for strong electrolytes in ionic we have done, the alpha is approximately 1. For weak electrolytes, the alpha is near 0. That's the one. So to a larger extent are strong electrolytes, and weak are the ones which are to a small extent. Factors affecting the electrolytic conductance: nature of the electrolyte, size of their ions, and solvation. SOL, solvation, solute particles surrounded by the solvent molecule. So smaller the size, greater the conductance, greater the solvation, less is the conduction. So what it says, if the size is smaller, why do we say over there, the greater is the conductance and greater is solvation and less is the conductance there? Because what it says, if the size is smaller, then what happens? Solvation is more. They are surrounded by more of the ions, more of the ions of the solvent over there. That way. Same way, nature of solvent and viscosity. More polar is the solvent, greater is the ionization, and greater is the conductance. And greater the viscosity, that is less is the conductance. Viscosity is the flow of the solvent. Is this clear? With respect to friction, what we talk. Concentration, higher the concentration, less is the conductance. And temperature, as temperature increases over there, conductance increases because the electrolyte will dissociate to a greater extent. That's one parameter. Now, factors affecting metallic or electronic conductors. That is because of the metal which contains the mobile electrons, that's the metallic bonding. So as temperature increases, the metallic bond breaks, electrons are no more available. So but of this, its resistance increases, its conductance will decrease. That's what it says. Nature and structure of the metal, number of valence electrons per atom. Like aluminium contributes 3 electrons per ion, and sodium will contribute only 1 electron per ion. Temperature, it decreases with increase in temperature. That's a very important point, because the kernels, that's the positively charged ions or the cations, they start vibrating and the force of attraction is broken there. So electrolytic and electronic conductors. Here the flow of electricity is due to electrons. Here it is due to ions over there. That is one. Second, electronic flow is without decomposition, whereas in electrolytic it is with decomposition, because in electronic is just a force of attraction between the cations and the mobile electrons. This point important. Conduction decreases with temperature because the cations start vibrating and the attraction breaks. Here the conduction increases with temperature because the dissociation will increase. Now we have all the different resistance, resistivity, conductance, conductivity, molar conductivity, equivalent conductivity and all. I'm just talking about the formula. So just see quickly over there. R is equal to, either you say E or sometimes we can also call it as V. So R is equal to V by I. Resistance is measured in terms of ohm over there. So the working part, ohm is nothing but work per unit area upon A. So the unit part, kg meter square upon nothing but second cube A square. Conductance, that's the reciprocal of resistance. So G is 1 by R. So that's per ohm or mhos, or we also call it as Siemens. Specific resistance or resistivity, that is what we call as rho, RHO, where resistance is directly proportional to length, inversely proportional to area. So R is equal to rho L by A. Specific resistance or resistivity, that's rho. And unit is basically ohm centimeter. All right. Or in the SI, it is ohm meter. Then the next one we have, there is specific conductivity or just called conductivity. So that's basically what we call as kappa. Okay, that is 1 by rho. So resistance part, if I have to put up, you put up the substitute formula. So kappa is equal to G into L by A, where G is for conductance. Where normally length is 1 centimeter and the area is 1 centimeter square. Then in that case, we say conductivity is equal to conductance. So conductivity is the conductance of 1 centimeter cube of a conductor. Unit of kappa, that is per ohm per centimeter, or in the SI per ohm per meter or Siemens per meter. So 1 Siemens per centimeter is 100 Siemens per meter. That's the conversion part from what we have as meter and centimeter. Equivalent conductivity, that's basically lambda EQ, capital lambda, and EQ is for equivalent. That's the basically with respect to its equivalent weight. Equivalent conductivity of a solution at dilution is the conductance of all the ions produced when 1 gram equivalent of the electrolyte is dissolved in V centimeter. What is 1 gram equivalent? Equivalent weight of a substance is called 1 gram equivalent. So for HCl, molar mass is 36.5, number of H plus ions is 1. So equivalent weight is 36.5 upon 1, which is 36.5. So 36.5 grams of HCl is called 1 gram equivalent of HCl. Same way NaOH, that's a monoacidic base. So for NaOH, molar mass is 40. It gives one replaceable OH ions, so 40 by 1. So 40 grams is the molar mass as well as its equivalent mass. And this 40 grams is also called 1 gram equivalent of NaOH. Distance between the two electrodes, that is the cathode and anode, will be of generally 1 centimeter. And the area, is this clear, is so large that the whole solution is present between them. Now relationship between equivalent conductivity and kappa, like how we have molar conductivity, same way equivalent conductivity. So same way equivalent conductivity is kappa into the volume there, where the volume, if the concentrations is with respect to normality, that is nothing but moles per dm cube. Normal standard concentration has to be moles per meter cube. If it is in dm cube, then the numerator is multiplied by 1000. So it is 1000 K by C, where concentration is in terms of normality. All right. But if the concentration is in moles per meter cube rather than moles per dm cube, then it will be only over there nothing but K by C. 1000 will not come. Where V is the volume containing 1 gram equivalent and C equivalent represents the concentrations. So the units of equivalent conductivity, that is per ohm centimeter square per equivalent, or Siemens meter square per equivalent. Then comes molar conductivity, that's capital lambda M, that's for basically the conductance with respect to 1 mole of an electrolyte. 1 mole of the electrolyte dissolved in V centimeter cube, same way distance is 1 centimeter. And that part is also 1000 K by C, where concentration is now molarity. Okay. Same way 1000 only when it is moles per liter. Otherwise, just capital lambda is K by C if the concentration is in moles per meter cube. Molar conductivity per ohm centimeter square per mole, or Siemens meter square per mole. Then expressions for equivalent conductivity and molar conductivity. So both we are trying to do, these are the units part, what you have to see. That is equivalent conductivity Siemens meter square per equivalent. Kappa is Siemens per meter. If it is normality, then it is gram equivalents per meter cube. I told you, if it is gram, if it is what I can call gram equivalents per meter cube, then no 1000. And same way, what it says, or Siemens per meter will be into 1000 liters per meter cube if it is in gram equivalents per liter. Same way for molarity, it will be moles per meter cube, then it is no 1000, but if it is moles per liter, then the 1000 will come. Okay, that's one part. Conductivity cell, that is basically a cell, two platinum electrodes at a fixed distance apart from each other, that's the length A, and having a cross section of area A over there. That's a conductivity cell. We can calculate the cell constant. Kappa is G into L by A. So cell constant, distance between the two electrodes, A is the area of the cross section. So L by A is a constant. Now here is written as G dash or G asterisk. You can put, there is actually no special, alphabet put up for a cell constant. Different books have different thing. Here it is called as G asterisk over there. Some places it's just written as B. B is the cell constant, which is L by A. That specific conductivity is equal to conductance into cell constant. So K is equal to G into, you can call it as G asterisk or you can call it as B also, any unit. Unit will be per centimeter or per meter in the SI because it's length by area. Molar conductivity related to equivalent conductivity. This is an important part. Equivalent conductivity will be molar conductivity upon, what is this V plus and Z plus? That's basically the V plus and V minus are the stoichiometric coefficients of the cations and anions. And Z is the charges on it. So either you say molar conductivity upon the stoichiometric coefficients, is this clear, into nothing but over there what we call as the charges on the cation, or molar conductivity upon the stoichiometric coefficients of the anions into the charges. The water used for preparation is called the conductivity water. This part is all okay. Yeah. Then now variation of conductance with respect to dilution. Now normally what do we say? Conductance increases because total ions increases, but specific conductivity decreases. Because what is specific conductivity? That's kappa. Specific conductivity is the conductivity which is per centimeter cube. So number of ions per centimeter cube will decrease. So on dilution, overall conductance increases, but the specific conductivity or just conductivity will decrease because that's the conductivity per centimeter cube. And molar conductivity increases on dilution. Equivalent as well as molar conductivity will increase. Now this variation with concentration, that is of molar conductivity with concentration, was given by the D by Huckel-Osanga equation. That is the Y is equal to mx plus c, that capital lambda is equal to lambda naught. What is lambda naught? Molar conductivity at infinite dilution or molar conductivity at zero concentration. Minus a root c, where minus a is basically the slope over there. Root c is the intercept that is made on the over there, nothing but the y-axis. That is one. Lambda naught molar conductivity at infinite dilution or at zero concentration. Infinite dilution or zero concentration. The slope is minus a. Yeah. Now this was the part what was observed, that for strong electrolytes it increases, but you have to extrapolate the graph. Extrapolate because it does not form an intercept. So to make an intercept over here, that is basically lambda naught. Okay. You have to extrapolate. So for strong electrolytes, if you dilute them 1,000 times or 10,000 times, it reaches the maximum value. That's why I said the graph increases linearly, but it does not form an intercept. So your extrapolation method, you get an intercept. But for weak electrolytes, we have seen as per Ostwald's dilution law, the alpha for a weak electrolyte is approximately 1 only at infinite dilution. So the minute you go on diluting it, alpha goes on increasing. It starts giving out more and more amount of ions, but it never forms, or it will never form an intercept on the y-axis. It's going to be almost parallel over there. So hence the difficulty was you cannot calculate the molar conductivity or the equivalent conductivity of weak electrolytes. That's why the chemist Colroche came up with Colroche's law, where if you know the values of the strong electrolytes or the ions of the strong values, or if you know the values of the molar conductivities of the ions at infinite, what we can call as infinite or zero concentration or at infinite dilution there, then using the values of strong, we can calculate the values of weak electrolytes. So that's what it says. For weak electrolytes, capital lambda is much less and increase in dilution is very slow. So if you dilute them 1,000, 10,000, still its alpha will go on increasing for weak electrolytes. Molar conductivity increases, but the interionic attraction decreases on dilution. That is the part over there. So inability to calculate lambda m for weak electrolytes. We couldn't calculate there. So by extrapolation, you can only calculate for strong, not for weak. And that was given by the chemist Colroche. What was the part over there? Equivalent conductivity of an electrolyte at infinite dilution is the sum of the equivalent conductivities of its cations and anions. All right. Or you can put up in the other way also. Molar conductivity at infinite dilution is the sum of the ionic conductivities of the cations and anions multiplied by the ions present over there. Or we can say the Colroche's law specifies that every ion is independent of the co-ion which is present, and at infinite dilution or zero concentration, it has its own independent value. So if you know the values of the ions of the strong electrolytes at infinite dilution, you can add, subtract over there and get the values of the weak electrolyte. So that's the part. So lambda naught is basically x into lambda naught of over there, nothing but y plus, and y into lambda naught of x minus. So look at that. To calculate the values of acetic acid, it is basically sodium acetate. All salts are strong electrolytes, irrespective whether it is strong acid or strong base. plus HCl minus NaCl. So when you add over there and subtract, the sodium ions will get cancelled and the chloride will get cancelled. So it's acetate plus H plus ions. Same way, lambda naught of sodium ammonium hydroxide will be ammonium chloride plus NaOH minus NaCl. So these Na plus Na will go out and the Cl will go out. So you'll have ammonium and OH ions. So molar conductivity of ammonium chloride, small lambda of ammonium, small lambda naught is the value of ammonium ions at infinite dilution or zero concentration. Barium hydroxide will be lambda, small lambda of barium plus twice small lambda of OH ions, because barium hydroxide gives 2 OH ions. Same way barium chloride, small lambda of barium and twice lambda naught of chloride. All right, so that is the part. So NH4OH will be NH4Cl plus half barium hydroxide minus half barium chloride there. So that's the way. So look at that. Lambda naught equivalent conductivity for molar from limiting molar conductivity are simply called ionic conductance lambda naught. A few examples are, if equivalent is there, if it is now that was molar above, lambda naught M, okay, now it is lambda naught EQ. So if you talk about the equivalent conductance over there, then for equivalent conductance, Na and Cl will be same, but if it is barium chloride, it will be half barium. Why half barium? Because it's divalent. So it is with respect to the charge only, like how we do equivalent weight, molar mass upon replaceable H plus ions or OH ions for an acid or base. That way. So barium ion is divalent, so half barium corresponds to its gram equivalent, and plus lambda naught of chloride. Same way aluminum chloride, aluminum is trivalent, so 1/3 aluminum and 3 sulfate. So sulfate over there is SO4 2 minus. So basically half sulfate is what we take. So 1/3 and half over there. So that's the part. So where we say N plus and N minus are the charges on the cation and anion there. Same way calculation over there, that is equivalent conductivity from molar conductivity. That is the same part over there. Now look at this examples you observe. That's important. That's called the valency factor or the N factor. Have a look at the example. This is important from calculation. Sometimes if they ask you equivalent conductivity from molar conductivity. So equivalent conductivity will be molar conductivity upon the valency factor. Like for potash alum, that is alum, what we have, that's a double salt, potassium sulfate dot aluminum sulfate dot 24H2. So your water is not taken, but with respect to the ions, capital lambda will be, there are 2 potassium, so twice lambda naught of potassium. Sulfate totally is 3 plus 1. So you will have 4 sulfate and you have 2 aluminum ions. So 2 lambda naught of Al. That's going to be now total charges you see, the positive and the negative. Each sulfate is -2. So -2 into 4, that will be -8. And come to the cation part. Aluminum is trivalent, so +3 into 2, that's +6. Each potassium is monovalent, so that's 2 potassium. So +2, +6, +2, +8. So total charges are either +8 or -8. So equivalent conductivity will be molar conductivity divided by 8. Either the total charges of the cation or the total charge of the anion. Similar to how we calculate the equivalent weight of a salt. Equivalent weight of a salt is molar mass upon the total charge on the cation or the total charge on the anion. Same way, look at that. Sodium potassium oxalate, Na plus and K plus, the positive charge will be of +2, and each COO minus will have a charge of -1 into 2. So that's -2. So equivalent conductivity is molar conductivity divided by 2. Okay, so this very important point. Then calculation of alpha, that's the degree of dissociation. What's alpha defined? Number of moles dissociated upon number of moles initially present. So here if I have to calculate, it is lambda upon lambda naught. That is molar conductivity at a known concentration upon lambda naught M. Molar conductivity at infinite dilution or at zero concentration. That's the part for alpha. And from there, we can calculate its Ka value. That's the dissociation constant value, which according to the, what we can call as the Ostwald's dilution law, we have it as alpha square C upon 1 minus alpha. It should be alpha square C. That's the dissociation constant as per Ostwald's law for a weak acid. K is alpha square C upon 1 minus alpha. That is the degree of dissociation alpha is inversely proportional to the square root of its concentration or directly proportional to the square root of its dilution V. So we can calculate, if we know concentration, we can get alpha, Ka value and all of them. That is one. Capital lambda is K into 1000 by molarity, where molarity is moles per liter. Solubility, that's the concentration, can be also written as K into lambda upon lambda naught. Why solubility? So we can calculate solubility product KSP. Remember, no? S into S, S square, AB2, 4S cube, A2B3 types. That's nothing but 108 S5. AB3 types. That's 27 S raised to 4. That types can be done. So that is one more formula what we can have. Calculation of absolute or ionic mobility. That's an add-on part there. Absolute ionic mobility is the speed of the ions in centimeter per second at infinite dilution, where ionic mobility is ionic conductance upon 96,500. That's basically a Faraday. Then the transport number or transference number, also called as Hittorf's number. That's what I said. The fraction of the current carried by an ion is called transport number, where over there NC, C is for the cation, current carried by the cation upon the total current. That's the transport number of anion. And transport number of over there nothing but anion, same way cation anion. So transport number for cation, current of the current carried by cation upon the total, that's the fraction. And the total over there, the transport number, sum of transport numbers will be 1, just like how we have, you know, what we can call, we had mole fraction, sum of all mole fraction is unity. Same way, sum of all the transport number is unity. Then, effect of concentration on temperature on transport number. What it says, with increase, this is an add-on part, so just have a look at it. With increase in concentration, transport number decreases. Further, for 1:1 electrolyte, if transport number ion is greater than 0.5, it decreases with increase in temperature. But if it is less than 0.5, it increases with increase in temperature till it reaches a value of 0.5. So it's basically till it becomes equal for both. Then transport number of chloride in HCl is less than in NaCl. Why the transport number is less? Because of the size over there. Answer is very simple. See, transport number of chloride is nothing but what we can call as is directly proportional to the speed. So similar to how we calculate the mole fraction. So the U of chloride upon nothing but over there, the charges for both, the speed of both H plus and chloride, where we say H plus has a smaller size. So because of the smaller size over there, we say transport number is directly proportional to the speed of the ions. Now this is an important point. Comparison of transport number of lithium, sodium and potassium. Now these questions are there. Lithium is smaller in size than sodium. Hence it is expected to have a greater transport number than sodium, but the actual position is otherwise. This is because lithium has got greater hydration enthalpy. We have done that in S block. Smaller the size, more is the hydration enthalpy. So for the same reason, transport number of Na plus is less than K plus, because potassium will have a bigger size. So larger the size, greater would be the transport number. Calculation of ionic conductance from transport number. Ionic conductance is transport number of that ion into its equivalent conductivity at infinite dilution. Now these are all the add-on points just for information basis. When coming to the cells, electrolysis. Electrolysis is basically, we all know, you have an external battery from where current is being drawn and a non-spontaneous redox reaction is made to take place. So that's basically nothing but electrolysis. So if you take fused or molten NaCl, then we have sodium metal deposited at the cathode, where sodium ions undergo reduction and chloride ions undergo oxidation at anode to liberate chlorine gas. So that's a decomposition of the electrolyte by the passage of electricity through its aqueous solution or molten or fused state, what we call. That's one. Now over here, the positive pole is the anode. So the polarities are exactly opposite as compared to galvanic cell. So in galvanic cell, anode was negative, cathode was positive. In electrolytic cell, it's ulta. Anode becomes the positive electrode, cathode becomes the negative electrode. So negative ions go towards the anode The electrode connected to negative pole, that's the cathode, and the cations will move there. Now the products will depend upon the discharge potential. That is what we call as selective discharge. Okay, who has greater tendency to get oxidized or reduced. Like if I take molten lead bromide, molten means without water, then it is lead and bromine only. So bromine is placed above. So bromide ions will undergo oxidation to liberate bromine, and lead ions will undergo bromide ions will undergo oxidation to give bromine, and over there nothing but you will have lead ions undergoing reduction to give you lead over there, because metal ions generally over there at cathode will be reduced. So you will have lead and bromine. Same way, if I take molten NaCl, then sodium at the cathode, chlorine at the anode. Now very important here is the fourth one. If I take acidulated water, that is acidified water, it's basically H plus ions undergoing reduction to liberate hydrogen at cathode, and at anode there is oxygen gas. So this is how they can ask you, okay, what are the products formed? This is important. Aqueous NaCl. At cathode there is hydrogen gas due to selective discharge, because reduction potential, or if I'm talking with respect to H plus ions, is going to be over there greater as compared to sodium ions. In fact, sodium is down, so its reduction potential is negative, and H plus, the potential is arbitrarily fixed as 0. And at the anode, chloride ions undergo oxidation to liberate chlorine gas. Should have been oxygen gas, but due to over voltage, chlorine is liberated. Same way, if I take aqueous copper sulfate, copper is above, so at the cathode, copper will go, whereas at the anode, whereas over there nothing but at the anode, you will have oxygen gas. Why I got copper? Because copper is above. I told you, the 5 metals: copper, silver, gold, platinum, mercury. So the metal ions have more tendency for reduction, so they are reduced at cathode. Same way if I do over there, look at that. Now this was using platinum electrodes. Now this is aqueous copper sulfate using copper electrodes. Then what's going to happen? Then at both places it will be copper. At cathode, cupric ions will be reduced, and at anode, copper will get oxidized because you're using the copper electrode. So at anode, the same copper metal strip or the copper wire will get oxidized to cupric ions, and at the and at the cathode, the cupric ions will get reduced to copper. So be very clear in reading whether they are saying using platinum electrodes or using copper electrodes. So with platinum, it's copper and oxygen. With copper electrodes, it is at anode, copper is oxidized to cupric, and at cathode, the cupric ions are reduced to copper. Then, if you take AgNO3 solution, then you get silver at cathode and oxygen at anode. But if you use silver electrodes, then same way. Silver gets oxidized to silver ions at the anode, and silver ions get reduced to silver metal at the cathode. That is the part. So that's the selective discharge part. Electrolysis of acidic solution gives hydrogen at cathode, whereas alkaline solution, they give oxygen at anode. That's an important point. Then comes the Faraday's first and second law. With Faraday's first law, quantity of electricity passed is directly proportional to the weight of the substance deposited will be directly proportional to its quantity of electricity passed. So W is proportional to Q, or W is equal to ZQ, which is equal to ZIT, where Z is called as ECE, electrochemical equivalent. So if the number of coulombs is 1, in other words, 1 ampere for 1 second, that is Q is equal to 1 coulomb, then W is equal to Z. So in other words, electrochemical equivalent is the weight deposited on passing 1 coulomb charge through the aqueous solution or through the solution. Okay, so W is equal to Z when Q is 1. Now Faraday's second law: 2 or more electrolytic cells arranged in a series connection and same quantity of electricity is passed, then the weights deposited at the respective electrode will be directly proportional to their chemical equivalence or their equivalent weights. So basically the formula W1 upon W2 is equal to E1 by E2. And how do I calculate the equivalent weight? Atomic mass of the metal divided by its oxidation state in that particular compound. Like in copper sulfate, Equivalent weight will be atomic mass of copper, that is 63.5 divided by 2, because in copper sulfate is -2, copper is +2. So 63.5 divided by 2, 31.75. Silver is always monovalent. So atomic mass and equivalent mass are same, that is 108. Copper, silver, two very regular questions. So remember the values. 1 Faraday, that is 96,500 coulomb. That is a charge in electrons. That's 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 coulombs multiplied by Avogadro's number. We get this. So 96,500 coulombs is the charge carried by Avogadro's number of electron. And 1 mole of electron is 1 Faraday. EC and equivalent weights, what we do, we can calculate that. 1 Faraday always deposits 1 gram equivalent. So when you pass 1 Faraday, the weight is its equivalent weight. Okay, that is one. So electrochemical equivalent is equivalent weight upon 96500. Calculation of number of moles you pass. So I said no, 1 mole of electron corresponds to 1 Faraday. So sodium is monovalent, so it will give 1 mole sodium. Copper is divalent, so 2 Faraday or 2 moles of electrons or 2 Faraday will give 1 copper. Aluminium is trivalent, so 3 Faraday will give 1 mole. Chloride over there, it's 2, so 2 electrons over there, so 2 Faraday will give 1 mole of chlorine. So just look at the electrons and then try to gauge it, how it is. Then same way the difference part over there. Now this is the whole what I can call as a working part, where I'll put it in a short form. W is equal to ZIT. Z is equal to E by F. So W is E by F IT, or W is equal to E by F Q, because Q is equal to IT. Okay, so you can use any of them, where E is the equivalent weight. F is Faraday, 96,500 coulombs. I is the current in amperes, and T is the time, always in seconds. Then next we have electrical energy in terms of joules. When I do, yeah, that is 1 watt is 1 joules per second. That's the unit converts. And for a particular ions to be deposited, that is basically the selective discharge part it is talking over there. Then that's called basically the discharge potential. Ions to be deposited on the electrode requires a minimum voltage that must be applied. So the discharge potential is in the order. Lithium ions will have the least because it's at the bottom. So tendency for reduction is the least. And iodide here will be over there comparatively on way on the top. So it will have maximum tendency to get reduced over there. That's one. So in this case, we will say if mass of the metal on the surface found out, if I know over there the volume of the metal to be deposited, now we know that volume is gonna, that's the density formula, density is mass by volume. So we can use that. And also we can have over there nothing but surface area and the thickness, which is equal to volume deposited divided by its surface area. All right, because the volume will be area into its thickness. Difference between the two, galvanic cell and the electrolytic cell, if you observe, what is the main difference over there? The spontaneity part. Galvanic is a spontaneous redox reaction happens. Electrolytic cell, a non-spontaneous redox reaction happens, and the energy change. Galvanic, that's basically chemical to electrical, and electrolytic is electrical to chemical. And predicting products of electrolysis. Now predicting products is basically the selective discharge part, what we discussed. Okay, whoever has higher reduction potential, that is the one that will be reduced at the cathode. And same way in oxidation, who has more tendency to get oxidized will undergo oxidation at anode there. That is one part. Now looking at that, we have these terms over there. Then over voltage, that's a very important point, what we discussed for aqueous, or what we can call as fused NaCl, where we said that for metals to be deposited during electrolysis, the voltage required is almost the same as the standard electrode potential. However, for the liberation of the gas, some extra voltage is required. That voltage is what we call as extra voltage. So where the electrode and the electrolytic solution are in direct contact over there, all right, that is at the interface of the two. You know, we have to supply more voltage, and that's the reason why we say for aqueous NaCl, rather than OH ions having a greater oxidation potential. Chloride ions undergo oxidation and chlorine gas is liberated. That is one. Then the next we have over there, that is effect of concentration on the products of electrolysis. Yeah, as electrode potential changes with concentration, the product of electrolysis depends on the concentration. For example, in electrolysis of H2SO4, we have the following reactions taking place. That is water giving us oxygen and H plus ions, and sulfate is there. So if H2SO4 is dilute, then the first reaction occurs. Matlab oxygen gas is liberated. And if H2SO4 is concentrated, then it will be over there nothing but the second reaction will be liberated over there. Clear? That's one. Then second is on electrolysis of an aqueous solution of NaCl on the basis of its oxidation of what it says potential. Water should have been oxidized, but actually, yeah, that's the over voltage concept what we just now discussed. Then the next part over there is yes, again the same way. If there are two or more cations to be deposited, the one having higher reduction potential will be reduced, and same for anode, the one having higher oxidation potential will be oxidized. In case of sulfate and nitrate at the anode, both these ions are not oxidized, but water is oxidized to give oxygen gas. That is one part. Now we have the different batteries. Primary cells, two types of cells, primary and secondary. That's the last part. Primary cells, the one which cannot be recharged, and secondary cells, the one which can be recharged. Like for example, we will see over here in the primary cells, dry cell and mercury cell, that's the button cells, what we use in watches and all. That's a primary cell. Secondary cell is basically the car batteries and the nickel cadmium cells, that is the rechargeable pencil cells. Or here, most important part is I just want everybody to understand, you just need to know the reactions. That's all that can be asked over there. So dry cells, zinc is the anode, graphite is the cathode. MnO2, that's the depolarizer what is used along with ammonium chloride and zinc chloride. Mercury cell, we have zinc, graphite, and we have alkaline medium, that is HgO, mercuric oxide and KOH. Lead storage battery, that's the lead accumulator. We have lead at the anode and lead dioxide, PbO2 at the cathode. And we have 38% H2SO4, that is W by W. Nickel cadmium, we have cadmium as the anode and nickel dioxide, that will be the cathode. And again in an alkaline medium, because alkaline batteries have a longer life as compared to acidic batteries. So now these are the reactions there. Dry cell, zinc is oxidized, and over here MnO2 gets reduced to Mn2O3. And why the backward reaction does not happen? Because the zinc complexes with ammonia to give you a zinc ammonia complex, which is a coordinated complex. All right, and because of the coordinated complex, the backward reaction does not happen. Same way, mercury cell, zinc is oxidized to zinc oxide, and HgO, that's mercuric oxide, is reduced to mercury. Nickel cadmium cell, cadmium is oxidized to cadmium hydroxide, and nickel dioxide is reduced to nickel hydroxide. That's for the NiCad. Only know their net cathodic and anodic half. That's all. Net cell, so you can write looking at that. That's easy. Then the car battery. There are two things: discharging, charging. No discharging properly, charging will become exactly opposite. So in discharging, what was anode becomes cathode in charging, and while discharging, what was cathode becomes anode in the charging part. So while discharging, lead gets oxidized to lead sulfate, and that's at the anode, and at cathode, lead dioxide is reduced to lead sulfate. Simple oxidation numbers, 0 to +2. Here PbO2 +4 becomes +2. So this is the net reaction. Lead is oxidized to lead sulfate. Lead dioxide is reduced to lead sulfate, and H2SO4 is converted to water. So the specific gravity falls. And in the charging takes place, the reaction is exactly ulta. There is electrolysis of lead sulfate. So again, lead is deposited, lead dioxide is deposited back. Lead sulfate, in 1 mole, lead sulfate is reduced to over there nothing but lead. Second place, it is oxidized to PbO2 and H2SO4, and water is converted back to H2SO. मतलब specific gravity H2SO4 is regenerated. So if H2SO4 is regenerated, specific gravity increases. That's the part. So during charging, it's electrolysis of lead sulfate, PbSO4. MnO2, that's a depolarizer. It will not allow the escaping of the hydrogen gas. That is one. Now you don't get back the, it can be, now what it's a dry cell is rechargeable. The reaction is occurring higher voltage, but the dry normal pencil cell is not. What we talk about the dry cell, it's not rechargeable. Yes, we have rechargeable batteries. That is the NiCad batteries. That is this one. A dry cell does not have a life because acidic ammonium chloride corrodes the zinc vessel when the cell is not in use. And second, the zinc complexes with ammonia to form a zinc ammonia complex. So the backward reaction does not happen. Mercury cell gives a constant voltage, but that's basically used in hearing aids, but it doesn't have a long life. Very long life is not there because being alkaline in medium, it can be used for some amount of time. Then nickel ion accumulator, this is an add-on one. Extra part what is there, as well as lithium batteries. These two are both extra points. We don't have it there, just for your knowledge based. It is iron with iron oxide and nickel with Ni2O3. All right, where first case Ni2O3 is reduced at the cathode to nickel oxide, and at the anode Fe is oxidized to FeO. That is one. And second is the lithium batteries. Normally our mobile phone batteries, what we have, that is the part what we have. The reason, lithium having the lowest reduction potential of around minus 3.04 volts, or the oxidation potential of plus 3.04 volts. So over there it says you are having over there, the potential can be kept for a long amount of time over there. Where they have given what is the cathode and anode and what the material is. It is as informative, so don't bother much on this. Then comes fuel cell. Yes, that is what we also call as the Bacon cell. That is used in first fuel cell was used in Apollo space, where is basically the combustion of fuels. So it's, if to put up in one liner, it's enthalpy of combustion of hydrogen. That's what the reaction is. So that's the reaction, enthalpy of combustion of hydrogen, where hydrogen at the anode is oxidized over there to H plus ions. That is one category. And at the cathode, oxygen is reduced to OH ions. Okay, so hydrogen oxidized to water and oxygen reduced to OH ions. And then we have the efficiency of a fuel cell, where we have this formula that is called eta is delta G upon delta H. That's called the fuel efficiency. That is a useful work done. That is delta G, that is minus NF E of the cell upon the enthalpy of combustion. That's delta H. All right, that's around 60 to 70% fuel efficient. So know this formula. Fuel efficiency eta is delta G upon delta H, and delta G is minus NFE upon delta H. So we can calculate the fuel efficiency if we know over there. So number of electrons exchanged are 2, and the E naught of the cell for fuel cell is plus 1.23 volts or plus 1.24 volts. So we can get delta G, that's negative, and delta H, that is the enthalpy change for water. That is formation of water. 1 mole of water enthalpy change is minus 285.8 kilojoules. So we can calculate the fuel efficiency, that is 83%. Same way, calculation of EMF of a hydrocarbon oxygen fuel cell. This also is an add-on extra point over there. So like you can take combustion of propane, any hydrocarbon burning, 1 mole burning with excess oxygen to form its oxides, that is CO2 water. And same way at the basic medium. So basic and acidic medium, when you add it up over there, we can calculate delta G from the formulas. And on applying, we are having over there the E naught values. But that's an add-on point. So just know the above part. Just do this part. That is eta is delta G upon delta H into 100. Okay, that's the fuel efficiency. Last part, people, what we say, corrosion. That's the electrochemical decay of a metal. In other words, anodic dissolution of the metal. So whenever a metal gets oxidized, that's called anodic dissolution. So that corrosion is due to formation of basically nothing but salts. Like for example, the chandeliers, copper chandeliers, formation of a green layer of copper carbonate, or on zinc, on iron, we have the formation of rust. So we have to talk about that. So here the reactions are there. Rust is hydrated ferric oxide, that's Fe2O3.x water. What is the concept of rusting? It's basically carbon dioxide trapped in moisture or formation of carbonic acid, which gives H plus ions. So it's because of H plus ions, you have the concept of corrosion, where Fe is oxidized to ferrous and H plus ions are reduced to hydrogen atoms, which combines with the oxygen dissolved to give you water. So that's the cathodic half. So the net reaction is, that's what's the part there. Fe is oxidized to ferrous, that's at the anode. H plus ions undergo reduction over there with the dissolved oxygen to give you water, that's the cathode. And these ferrous ions, which are formed at the anode, they further combine with oxygen dissolved to give you Fe2O3, that's hydrated ferric oxide. And the byproduct is very, very important, that is H plus ions, because the reaction doesn't stop. Reaction will further continue, where it's because of H plus ions, further any new surface of metal is exposed, again the process of corrosion will continue there. That's how it is. So that's hydrated ferric oxide. Now the factors which enhance corrosion over there, impurities. Pure metals do not, if it's a pure metal, it will never get corroded. It's because of the presence of moisture or presence of electrolytes. Now how to prevent? We have barrier protection. Matlab you put a barrier in front of it. So it's basically, what is the barrier? Like for example, if I have to protect iron, I have to put a layer of zinc on it, because zinc has a lower SRP. So zinc will readily get oxidized and prevent the rusting of iron there. So that's one. Or we also call that as sacrificial protection. Zinc will get oxidized. So zinc will itself get sacrificed and prevent iron from getting oxidized. In other words, it will prevent iron from getting rusted. And coating of zinc on the surface of iron, we also call it as galvanization. Or basically the iron pipes which we put down, what these BMC people put down, in the earth's crust over there for all their wirings and the waters and all the part. Down there is a lot of moisture, so the iron pipes, they get corroded. So they put over there an electropositive metal like magnesium. So magnesium lumps are attached next to these iron pipes. So whenever there's a moisture content coming, these iron pipes, rather than they getting oxidized, the magnesium metal having a lower SRP. In other words, magnesium having higher tendency to get oxidized, it gets oxidized. In other words, magnesium is oxidized and it prevents iron from getting rusted. So H plus ions are involved in the reduction of oxygen. If H plus ions concentration is over there, what it says, if H plus ion concentration is low, the P of H is high, reduction of oxygen may not take place considerably. For this reason, iron does not rust if the P of H is around 9 to 10. So if you have basically iron kept in an alkaline medium, what it says, if the H plus ion concentration, but of this 9 to 10, matlab OH ion, the H plus ions is 10 raised to minus 9 or 10 raised to minus 10, which is negligible. So if you keep iron in basically in an alkaline medium, the probability of rusting over there is less over there. That is one. Saline water helps rusting. Therefore, at places where it snows heavily and salting of roads is done, then there is greater rusting. Now, salting of roads is basically over there nothing but to remove the ice. Is this clear? From the roads over there, they sprinkle salt on it. Okay, that we'll be doing in colligative properties. That is basically depression and freezing point over there. So if there's a saline medium, then yes, process of corrosion will enhance. As cathode area contains dissolved oxygen, rust is being formed. The rust is formed at the site other than the site where pitting occurs over there. And if iron is coated with copper or tin, but obvious copper or tin, that tendency is not less. In fact, that tendency is, over there, if I compare iron with respect to copper, tin is placed above, above iron, and copper though is definitely above it. So the order wise, if I have to put up the E naught values, the E naught values of reduction potential will be in what order? You will have copper at the top, then you will have tin, and then you will have iron. So iron at the bottom will have maximum tendency to get oxidized. So copper and tin cannot prevent iron from getting rusted. Okay. All right.